Hello, and I am so kind of overexcited and just really amazed to be talking to you because you are, Dick, one of the absolute heroes of many of the people in ACER and certainly me and certainly most of my clinical psychology colleagues and just, yeah, your work, IFS, internal family systems, has been such a hugely inspiring and life-changing, life-saving approach for so many people that I know. So thank you for agreeing to come and have this conversation today, Dick.
No, I was really eager to do it, to see the woman behind that video, which was so profound, and I am showing it whenever I talk about IFS. So I'm honored and grateful to you for having made it.
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much. And we'll get to that in a little bit. We can talk a bit about the oak tree. So this conversation we're having is part of the ACER integration community. We're in July, the oak tree month, about welcoming all of our parts and allowing ourselves to be an ecosystem that has wild boars as well as bluebirds, and to allow them all to feast on the acorns and be bathed in the sun. And the month of July, the oak tree was really inspired by your book No Bad Parts, which was, just, it was kind of like cancel everything, like clear my diary, I just need to read this book for the, it was such a moment for me reading that book. So yes, the month of July in ACER is very much inspired by that amazing book and your amazing body of work. So
I'm very happy to hear that.
Could you describe for people, so there might be people listening to this conversation that maybe not, but there might be a few people that aren't, especially in ACER, who might be new to your work, who are not really sure about what IFS is. Could you give us just a brief summary of how the model works and what it speaks about?
Yeah. So basic assumptions are that we're not one mind, that we all have these subminds or subpersonalities, ego states, other systems call them, but that it's the nature of the mind to have what I call parts, and that's a good thing, because one mind can't do and think and act in all the ways we need to simultaneously. So we're born with them, and people who have the diagnosis multiple personality disorder are no different from anybody else, except theirs got blown apart more. But the fact that they have what that field calls alters is what I'm talking about in terms of parts. So they're sort of full range inner personalities, have a certain amount of autonomy. They have relationships with each other. They work together, but they also get polarized and drive you crazy. And they protect each other in various ways. But they're all valuable is the basic assumption that I didn't know until after several years of trying to find one that wasn't. Even the ones that are causing symptoms in my clients or making them do horrible things, it turns out, are doing it because of being frozen in the past during traumas often, and because they carry what I'm going to call burdens, which is extreme beliefs and emotions that came into us during a trauma or some kind of bad experience, and then attach to these parts and then drive them like the coronavirus, like a virus. And so basic premise is we all have them, and it's a really good thing to have them, but trauma and attachment injuries and growing up in families that don't appreciate some parts force them out of their naturally valuable roles into roles that can be damaging, but are at their heart just trying to be protective. And because they're frozen in time, they think you're still 5 years old, and they think they still have to protect you, like dissociate you or lead with rage or whatever they're doing, because you're still in that kind of danger and you still need their services. So so that's a radical departure from the way our cultural thinks of these things, and also the way most psychotherapies do. And unfortunately, a lot of psychedelic practitioners think of them as the annoying ego that needs to be dissolved or something like that. So so it's kind of a radical, that just one aspect of how it's a radical departure. And then as I, coming from a family therapy background and a systems thinker, and that's one of the things I loved about your videos, you really captured the systemic aspect of this. I'm also, when I started learning about these parts from clients, I began trying to organize how does this system operate, and found that some of them, before they were hurt, were these valuable inner childlike parts that lend us so much love and openness and creativity and so on. But after they get hurt, they're the ones that get hurt the most. They're the most sensitive parts of us. So they carry burdens of worthlessness or intense pain, emotional pain, or terror, or a variety of those kind of very powerful emotions and beliefs. And once they carry those burdens, we don't want anything to do with them because they have the power to overwhelm us and make us feel all that. And so almost naturally, we tend to lock them in inner basements and just try our best to stay away from them, not realizing that in doing that, we're locking up our most precious qualities simply because they got hurt. Mm. Thinking we're just moving on from the memories of the trauma or the emotions. And so I call those the exiles. They're the parts of us that we exile inside so that we don't have to feel what they went through. And once you have a bunch of exiles, you feel more delicate, the world seems more dangerous because anything can trigger them. And when they get triggered, they burst out like flames of raw emotion and can overwhelm you. So other parts are forced into becoming protectors. Some of them protect by managing your life so that the exiles don't get triggered. They'll manage your relationships so no one gets close enough to do that. Manage your appearance so you look good and you don't get rejected. Manage your performance so you get accolades to counter the worthlessness. Manage your relationships by taking care of everybody so they don't desert you, but don't let you take care of yourself, and so on and so on. So there are a lot of what we call manager roles that, again, are the roles the part was forced into. It's not natural to the part to do these things. And despite their best efforts, the world has a way of triggering your exiles. It's a big emergency. So there are other parts who stand by, other protectors, waiting for those flames to come, and will go into action immediately, impulsively, reactively to deal with that emergency. And so they tend to be the parts that give us these impulses toward addictions or anything to douse those flames or to get you higher than them or distract you till they burn themselves out. So also often rage is one, or dissociation, or there's a whole list of what we call firefighter parts. And they're both managers and firefighters are both under the rubric of protector, but they're often doing it in opposite ways. Managers are trying to keep you in control and please everybody, and the firefighters take you out of control and piss off everybody. And firefighters just think, I don't care about the consequences. I just got to get you away from that. It's terrifying. So that's the way most of us are walking around. Some of us are more dominated by one of those groups than the other. And the other big piece of IFS, which for me is actually the biggest discovery, for lack of a better word, is as I was helping people work with these parts, once I got hip to the fact they're not what they seem and they deserve to be listened to, I would try to get them to do that. And suddenly they'd be furious at the part that I was hoping they would start to get to know. And it reminded me of family sessions where I'm trying to have two people talk to each other and some third one jumps in and everything goes south. So began asking, I might ask you, Roz, could you find the part that hates the critic and is doing the talking? Could you get it to step back so we can just get to know the critic? And in doing that, when I would get enough parts to relax back, this other person would pop out of the blue, really, who would be calm and be curious about the critic or whatever part we were working with, or might have confidence where they're terrified of it, or have compassion for it. And in that state, things would go well. And the critic would reveal its secret history of how it got forced into its role. The person would have compassion for that, would reveal other parts that it was protecting that we could get permission to go to. And actually, there's a whole series of steps to actually heal these parts, get them out of where they're stuck in the past, and help them unload these burdens, at which point they'll transform. So when I ask clients now, what part of you is that? They say, that's not a part like these others. That's me. That's myself. So I came to call that the self with a capital S. And it turns out now, 40 years later, thousands of people doing this, that's in everybody, can't be damaged, is just beneath the surface of the parts. So that when they open space, it pops out spontaneously and it knows how to heal. It automatically goes into relating inside and outside in a healing way. So that for me is really the big deal about IFS, that many spiritual traditions know about this, but they don't know that it's just beneath the surface. So they think you got to meditate 20 years to get to it. So so that's a bit of a summary in a few minutes.
Beautiful. And I love hearing you talk about it as well. It's clear that it's been a bit of a journey for you too, that through all this work with people, the theory has developed and it's got richer, and you've made discoveries yourself, and it's wonderful. What a journey.
Yeah, none of this came out of my brain. I consider myself a scientist, so I was learning about these inner systems from one client and then comparing notes when I was exploring theirs with others. And over time, you just say, okay, this is all real, and there's a lot to learn about how it operates. And so it's been a fascinating journey of discovery and changing a lot of my assumptions I came to it with, and actually noticing myself and how many of I've got, and how much they need my attention too.
Oh, well, it's kind of reassuring that even after, we all have them, and I suppose they all always require nurturing and care. I guess it's like a lifelong family support system that we have to create inside.
That's right. After they've unburdened and out of where they're stuck, they don't need nearly the same level of care, but you still check in with your kids even if they've grown up. And so, it's nice to stay connected to them.
Beautiful. And so you developed this work in the 80s, and it's now so incredibly popular that in order to train as an IFS therapist, you people enter a lottery to get a place because they're so oversubscribed. I think probably the most oversubscribed training program that I've ever heard of. So why do you think that, I think that am I right in thinking that the popularity has just really expanded over recent years? Do you have a sense of why are we so hungry for IFS right now? What is it about now? Why do we need it so much now?
Yeah, I do think it's related to the need, that there's more need than ever for something like this now. I have this vision of, if we can bring enough of what I call self-energy to the planet, a lot of the problems we're facing, and more than ever now with global warming, for example, at least in the US, it's crazy, all the weather problems we're having, that somehow if enough self-energy comes, that will start to shift things. And so I think that's part of the reason why now. And I'm not sure otherwise. My friend Bessel van der Kolk wrote this best-selling book, and I had a chapter in that, and that's been like almost a #1 bestseller in the US for 6-7 years. So I think that helped spread the word some. And when I ask, for guidance about it, part of what I hear is they were waiting for me to do a certain amount of work so I could be prepared for this kind of expansion and be a good leader. So they didn't want to do that before I was ready.
Nice. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Mhm.
And what a journey for you. And I imagine your life has changed kind of in major ways with this sudden kind of, well, I don't know how sudden it was, but this real sense of being a leader of a whole kind of tribe of people that want to heal and want to bring that self energy, and what an important position that is that you're holding. And I wanted to ask you as well about the parallels between psychedelics and IFS, because I've heard you speak in a few interviews about this, and it ties in with what you were saying, I think, about the self knows how to heal. Could you tell us a bit about your ideas around how psychedelics work in an IFS kind of context?
Yeah. So, I haven't personally tried or worked with people that had tried the whole spectrum of psychedelics, but the ones I'm most familiar with, which would be ketamine and psilocybin, and a little bit with MDMA, seem to have the impact of helping these protective parts I was just talking about, particularly the managers, go to sleep or go offline, at least temporarily, which then people immediately access a huge amount of self. Those C word qualities, there are 8 C's actually, I only named 4. And that's a big invitation for all these exiled parts to come in and get some attention. And sometimes when that happens, the person starts having a panic attack. And one of the things IFS can help with is if you know that that's just a scared part, the person isn't having a panic attack, and it's actually good that that part's come in because now we can help it. And so you stay calm as the facilitator and talk to the part, and it'll tell you about all its fear, and then ask it to separate a little bit, and boom, self is right back, and then self can be comforting to it. So yeah, so all these parts that are stuck in these horrible places that need to tell their stories and be witnessed, and then what we call be retrieved, taken out of those scenes, that can all happen much quicker than it happens in actual IFS sessions sometimes. And I just showed a video working with a couple in this class, and in 10 minutes we did what would probably take 3 or 4 sessions. So with the wife. So yeah, so the protectors go offline, massive amount of self enters. All these exiles come, we can do a lot of healing of them. And then we can invite the protectors to come wake up and come back and see the changes. And so when I was first invited to do ketamine and IFS workshops, a guy named Phil Wolfson, I thought, we do pretty well on our own. We don't necessarily need that, but we do get stuck. But I've been really impressed with how quickly people can go to these places, and how much the psychedelics really facilitate that.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll mention is I think part of why it happens this way in our workshops is because what I learned the hard way in working without psychedelics is the importance of checking in with the protectors before we go to these exiles and going over all their fears about letting us do it and not going without their permission, their overt permission. So in the prep sessions for the psychedelic journeys, we'll just keep asking, are there any fears about going on this journey? And then as the fears come up, we'll listen, and then we'll reassure. And this is how we can handle that, and this is how we can handle that. And we say we're not going without your permission on the journey. And the people I'm co-leading this with say, the journeys are much more serene. We don't get any kind of bad trips or backlash. And so I think that's an important aspect of IFS that I'd like to bring to psychedelics.
That's beautiful. I think the members of our community and beyond will be so interested to hear that. That's such a great tip, actually, to check in with the protectors before going on a journey, because that so tallies with my experience so much of when people, when there was a part of them that wasn't really wasn't going to let go. And I guess it ties in with resistance. We think about resistance with psychedelics and struggling to surrender, but I guess it's very difficult to surrender when you have a whole line of army protectors standing in a row, kind of.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And sometimes they have really good reasons to not want to, and they need to feel like you're listening to their reasoning and you've got an answer to give them. And so it's not just listening and saying, okay, I feel bad for you. It's like, okay, you're worried I'm going to be judging you. I promise I won't be. Or you're worried you're going to never come back. Well, I promise we'll get you to come back, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Negotiating and
Negotiating.
and respecting, I suppose, what their fears enough that you want to problem solve them rather than just push them away, like
Exactly.
giving service. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's inspiring. It makes me very excited about all the future possibilities of IFS and psychedelic therapy together. I think it's very full of so much promise.
I'm excited. You're excited. I know you have a lot of influence, and one of my big goals now is to help IFS become at least one of the prominent maps to that territory.
Oh, yes. I mean, it just fit. They just go hand in hand so perfectly for all the reasons you've said and more. And I suppose what you said as well about the so much self energy coming in as well. That so maybe this is a way to kind of segue a bit into the oak tree. So in ACER, as I said before, your book No Bad Parts so inspired me that the July tree, which is the oak tree, was really created around this idea of no bad parts, the protectors, the exiles, the self energy. And so I thought of the metaphor, because everything we do in ACER is about trees. So I thought of the metaphor of the oak tree as being this home to so many species, because the oak is home to like hundreds of species of insects and birds and animals, and the oak is a sanctuary for more species, I think, than any other tree potentially. And I don't know if that's 100% correct, but one of the most, and they have like strong branches, and they're like a kind of castle of steadiness. And the sun in this metaphor is the self, because the oak tree is us, and it has all the animals that live amongst our branches, the beetles, the spiders, everything, the parts we don't like, the parts that we do like, the parts that fight each other and scare each other. But then we have this sun that comes down, and we know that feeling of like when we're on when the sun is shining, it just feels that sense of like, everything can relax. So it's like there's all these animals in our ecosystem, but if you go up high enough in the tree, you get beyond the clouds and you get to the place of blue sky and sun. So your kind of all of your work inspired the oak tree metaphor. And in the community, people watch a video that I sent to you, hoping you would watch it. And they also do a guided imagery meditation where they merge with an oak tree and they imagine the animals in their own ecosystem. Nice. The protectors, the exiles, which I'm very happy to send that to you as well, if you'd like to listen to that.
I would like that. Yeah, please.
And I know that you, as you said before, you like the video. So any kind of comment on this analogy, this metaphor of this tree ecosystem?
Yeah, I very much liked it, and I wasn't aware, of all those facts about oak trees. It's really, really wonderfully eloquent what you did with it. And I also, one thought I had to add was that a lot of these things that these parts of us, or these animals that seem violent or or even attacking each other a lot of the time, it's because they're hungry. But if they have all the acorns they need and all the nourishment they need, they step out of their extreme angry, violent roles, and they can live together. They get along, and that's basically what you're saying. And just to, once our parts feel fed by us and loved by us, they stop hating each other and they stop fighting, and they brings a lot of peace inside. So
Oh,
the sun is also feeding them.
yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't really made so when the acorns are in the metaphor, but I hadn't really made that connection of the function of the acorns, and maybe the acorns are the C's, the compassion, the connection, the curiosity, and courage, or what would you say the acorns are? How do we feed our parts?
Yeah. The self-energy is nourishing, so the sun is providing some of that, and the actual acorn food. And so, yeah, again, when parts feel witnessed, when they feel connected to us, when they feel fed in those ways, like they're loved, just like kids, they stop being so extreme and they get along with each other.
So maybe the acorns are love, really.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just love that the parts really need. And without that, then yeah, they're going to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So would you have any tips for people in ACER who are integrating psychedelic experiences? Not necessarily with further psychedelic experiences, but just doing this kind of their own work. Are there any ways that people can use IFS, or are there how can people learn more if they want to learn more about this work from you? Like, what would be a good way of going a bit deeper?
There are lots of different ways. There are, for example, many videos on YouTube and other places of me doing demos or giving lectures. If people are interested and can't get into the training, which, as you say, is unfortunately a big problem now, we have what's called the Online Circle program on our website, which it gives you most all the content. The training programs are valuable because we have a 3-to-1 ratio with trainers to students, and so you get a lot of live supervision in those programs. But a lot of people do the Online Circle program and can do a lot of the work after that on their own too. A lot of books, a lot of other kinds of resources, audio meditations, and yeah, most of all that is listed on the website, which is ifs-institute.com.
And we'll put all the links in the platform that go alongside this video too. And so Dick, thank you so much for watching the film, for showing the film, for taking this time to talk, and most of all for this work, which I just feel has such an incredible legacy as well, and will be shaping the way we think about ourselves and the next generation think about themselves in such a helpful, nourishing and compassionate way. And I just love what you said today about how all the parts are good and that you've never met a bad one. That makes me feel, because we talk a lot about shadow work, but even the word shadow, it's like, ooh, the shadow. But I love this idea that even those parts of us that make the most noise or the most trouble actually they're our friends. They just need more acorns.
Yeah, totally. And I chose the word exile as opposed to shadow for that reason, because they're sort of in the shadows, but they got put there. That's not who they are. So yeah. And yeah, it's a pleasure to get to know you. And again, I was thrilled with the video, and I'm very grateful for that. And at some point, I'm going to make it to Australia. So it would be great to see you.
Well, it's been absolutely amazing to connect. Thank you so much. And I will send you the Oak Tree journey as well, so that you can have a listen to that too.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you so much. I'm going
you're welcome.
Stop recording and say thank you. So what do I press? Stop recording.